Carbs are the enemy, right? Bread makes you fat, pasta ruins your hormones, cookies are basically poison. I've heard it all from friends and family. I was in the gym the other day and a guy told me with the utmost confidence that sugar is the root of all cancers. But if carbs are truly the villain, why does your brain run on glucose? Why do endurance athletes fuel on carbs? And why do so many people feel better when they stop being afraid of them? Today, we're doing a factual breakdown of how carbs got labeled bad, why low-carb diets can actually work, and why carbs are not just allowed, they're actually useful. And for a lot of people, part of an incredibly healthy diet. I hate to do this, but first we have to define what carbs actually mean. Carbohydrates include sugar, starches, and fiber. That's everything from fruits and beans to rice, bread, candies, sodas, and yes, cookies. So when someone says carbs are bad, the question really is, in what amount and with what context? Because the truth is, carbs don't actually make you gain weight, and carbs don't actually make you unhealthy. I lost 110 pounds eating quite a bit of carbs. Carbs didn't become controversial because one day science discovered that carbs are toxic, regardless of what some social media influencers say. It happened because nutrition messaging and the food environment changed over time. In 1977, a US Senate committee published dietary goals for the United States, and one of the recommendations was to increase carbohydrate consumption to account for 55 to 60% of total calories. Then over the next decades, government dietary guidance continued evolving. Most people, especially now with the news, remember the 1992 USDA Food Guide Pyramid, which placed bread, cereal, rice, and pasta at the base, commonly communicated as 6 to 11 servings a day. Now here is the key nuance. The message wasn't eat cookies all day. The intention was closer to more grains, more plant foods, less saturated fats. But in the real world, low fat became a marketing gold rush. Low fat was everywhere. A lot of packaged foods that were labeled low fat ended up being higher in refined carbs and added sugars. So carbs got blamed for a problem that was really food quality, processing, hyperpalatability, and people unknowingly eating more total calories. That is when carbs became the scapegoat. So why do low carb diets work? People lose weight on them. I want to talk about that, but first let me tell you about today's sponsor, which is one of my favorite carbs, Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first baked from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, artisanal pastries, and fresh pastas. I mean, look at all of this. I've been getting their plant-based box and I can't imagine going back to store-bought. Wild Grain uses simple ingredients you can pronounce and a slow fermentation process that can be easier on your belly and richer in nutrients and antioxidants. Every product bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less, no thawing required. The freezer locks in flavor, nutrients, and texture without using preservatives. This is some of the best sourdough bread I've ever had. And with every box ordered, they donate 2 meals to a food security nonprofit of your choice at no extra cost. Plus, they are constantly adding seasonal products and new products. So there's always an exciting selection to choose from when you're building your next box. Wild Grain also has gluten-free, vegan, and their new protein boxes. So gang, you gotta check out Wild Grain. Click the link in my description and use code SauceStache to get $30 off your first box. Plus, you'll get free croissants for life. Wild Grain, thanks for sponsoring today's video and for making incredible plant-based breads, pasta, these croissants, oh my god, the cookies, I can't wait to make the cookies later. So we're back. Let's be fair. Low-carb diets work for a lot of people. I tried one at one point, I lost a decent amount of weight. It didn't stick. And low-carb diets are not new. The ketogenic diet was originally developed as a medical therapy for epilepsy. It was named in the early 1920s, historically attributed to Dr. Russell Wilder at the Mayo Clinic. Now, modern low-carb diets come in a bunch of flavors. Low-carb, keto, Atkins style, paleo-ish, cutting carbs without calling it anything, carnivore diets. But keto is usually very low carb. A common threshold described in medical nutrition resources means that you're typically staying under around 50 grams of carbs a day to promote ketosis. So if you've tried low carb, why does it work sometimes? When you cut carbs, you're typically cutting foods like desserts, chips, sugary drinks, bread snacks. I can eat this forever type of foods. And for many people, that naturally reduces calories. And this next part is extremely real and extremely misunderstood. Carbs are stored as glycogen in your muscles and liver, and glycogen holds water. Research literature on glycogen metabolism notes that each gram of glycogen is stored with at least 3 grams of water, which is the big reason why people typically see massive scale drops when they start low-carb diets. That doesn't mean that this diet burned fat. Actually, any fat at all. It often means that your glycogen stores in your muscles, the things that are going to provide instant energy, are completely depleted. The glycogen stores are depleted, the water is removed from your body. You've lost water weight. One thing that people often see is that low-carb diets will often improve things like triglycerides and raise HDL cholesterol in many people, though individual responses vary. And yes, for some people, that also means a spike, an increase in LDL cholesterol, your bad cholesterol. So low-carb can be a legitimate tool. So here's the important part. If you want to know if you can eat bread, pasta, or even a cookie from time to time without gaining weight, yes, you absolutely can, because the most important driver of weight change is energy balance. If you constantly eat more energy than you burn, weight increases. If you constantly eat less, weight decreases. The energy in versus energy out concept is a fundamental principle of body weight change, described in very factual scientific literature. So carbs are not fattening, a sustained calorie surplus is. That's why some people can lose weight eating high carb or low carb. And this isn't a theory. This is proven. A major 12-month randomized trial published in the Journal of American Medicine found no significant difference in weight change between a healthy low-fat diet and healthy low-carbohydrate diet. You don't have to fear carbs to be lean. You need a diet that you can stick with that keeps calories in check. That's how I was personally able to change my life, get off all of the named diets, and just try something new. Just eating healthy, moving a lot more. That changed everything. If I wanted to be able to eat ice cream or eat a cookie, I allowed myself without labeling those foods as bad. I just decided that I wouldn't eat so much of it or as often. And now I am years into a weight loss when prior to this, I would lose a lot of weight and almost immediately gain it back because the diet trying to eat low carb or give up breads and pastas and ice creams and cookies is just not sustainable. Now I want to get to the part that I think most people need to hear because I do not believe people believe this. Carbs are not just allowed. They're useful. Carbs support brain energy needs. The Institute of Medicine established an RDA for carbohydrates at around 130 grams per day for adults, based on the estimated glucose needs of your brain. Yes, your body can adapt and make glucose when carbs are low. Yes, I do not want to hear in the comments. I know ketones exist, but carbs are still a clean, efficient way to support energy needs. If you're doing any kind of intense exercise, training, like running, lifting, intervals, almost any sports, if you're playing pickleball, carbs will give you an advantage because they are an efficient fuel source for your body, especially higher intensity workouts. If your goal is to have better workouts, better recovery, better consistency, carbs make that easier. I was able to lose weight because I was able to find enjoyment in the activities that I did. And I found enjoyment in the activities that I did because I was able to do them longer without feeling worse quicker. If you're on a low-carb diet, sometimes that crash can feel very hard. But if you give yourself just a little bit of extra energy, that workout feels a lot better. And carbs also include one of the most important nutritional variables that people often ignore: fiber. Fiber is strongly associated with better satiety, better digestion, and overall better diet quality. So when people go zero carbs, they often accidentally cut out beans, fruit, oats, potatoes, whole grains. And those foods are not the problem for most people. Now this one's tough because I know people are going to comment on it. Correlation and causation is a very hard thing for people to understand. So if carbs aren't the enemy, why might you have felt so much better when you were on a low carb diet? Usually because what you actually cut wasn't carbs. You just cut a lot of junk food. I see people talking about how the carnivore diet changed their life and they made it feel so much better, when if you would have actually just stuck with a more whole foods diet, eating healthier, better quality foods more of the time, you probably would have felt just as good. We see it in people like Paul Saldana, who wrote a book on the carnivore diet and ended up over time slowly adding more and more carbohydrates and starches and fibers to his diet. Recently, I believe I heard that he just started adding more grains and things. And this guy was known as the carnivore guy. In a really important controlled NIH study led by Kevin Hall, where participants ate ultra-processed versus unprocessed diets for 2 weeks each. When eating ultra-processed foods, they consumed about 500 extra calories a day and gained weight. So, the issue isn't carbs as a macronutrient. The issue is when carbs show up as refined, low fiber, very energy dense, easy to eat fast, and engineered to be overconsumed. That's the problem. That's why a cookie can fit into a healthy diet, but a cookie diet cannot be healthy. Not because carbs are evil, but because behavior and calorie intake add up. So I hope that you got something from this. If you are talking about avoiding carbs, feel better. Take the weight off of your shoulders. Are carbs really the enemy? No. And honestly, carbs being demonized has probably made nutrition far more confusing than it needs to be. Here's the real, boring, evidence-aligned truth. You can eat bread and be healthy. You can eat pasta and stay lean. You can eat a cookie and not ruin your metabolism. If weight gain is happening, the driver is calories, not carbs magically turning into belly fat. Low carb works for many people mainly because it helps them reduce calorie intake. But it's not sustainable, and carbs can be actively beneficial for energy, training, and diet quality. If you want the simplest way to make carbs work for you, don't fear carbs. Choose better carbs more often. Keep the fun carbs as a controlled bonus. Match carbs to your activity level. If you train hard and work out hard, carbs are your friend. Have it a lot. When I ran the Boston Marathon, I was eating 600 grams of carbohydrates every single day for days leading up to the race. And lastly, my biggest piece of advice, the thing that really helped me over everything, I've talked about this a lot, stop making food moral. Carbs are not good. Carbs are not bad. They are a fuel source, very good fuel source. And sometimes they're just for enjoyment, which we all need, especially now. If you want, I could do a follow-up. I was thinking about doing this anyways, ranking different carbs to daily staples and carbs that are easy to overeat. I want to keep it factual and not confusing. That's my whole goal here, because carbs are not the enemy. Confusion is.